On behalf of the German Federal Culture Foundation, I'm delighted to welcome you to this exhibition and Symposium Odor. My name is Marie Haff, and I'm here in Siegen for the first time. I'm very much looking forward to finding answers to some fascinating questions. For those who aren't familiar with the Federal Culture Foundation, the foundation supports cultural projects in an international context. We are always interested in understanding what's happening out there, and learning what drives and inspires cultural players. So when the funding application for Odor landed on my desk, and that was in August 2021, I was immediately intrigued. And my interest was piqued by two things. First, the project's subtitle, Immaterielle Skulpturen, and second, the topic of sensory perception, which has been a favorite of mine for several years. And now I find myself among such distinguished group of experts. I've got so many questions to ask. If not now, then when? We are standing for a cutting-edge project, but so sorry, I must start a bit earlier in the Middle Ages. Don't worry, it just takes 14 minutes from then to now. But from the Middle Ages until the early modern era, alchemists combined substances together in search of the prima materia, the prime medium. They applied their sensory organs to that task with corrosive liquids and bodily secretions, with medical mixtures. They not only whipped and whisked their contrivances together, but also licked and sniffed and inhaled their vapors and fumes. So they conducted empirical investigations on these substances and elements with all their senses, and haptically, olfactorily, and visually. And philosophers later, with the Enlightenment, omitted the sense of smell from their aesthetic debate, for it so-called left no room for rational thought. They considered smell as a secondary sense, and in their opinion, touch and taste and smell, of course, were not capable of conveying the truth. To them, it seemed obvious to disqualify smell as a proximal sense which allowed no reflective distance. Then Jean-Jacques Rousseau, of course, in his book Emile on Education, 1762, describes smell as the sense of fantasy, which can awaken memories of complex emotions, and in so doing granted odor a small place in the age of sensitivity. Those were the decades when hectoliters of floral essences were being converted into perfume. In Europe, especially in Italy and in France, but that came to a grinding halt in 1791. After the storming of the Bastille, the Glove and Perfume Makers Guild, which mainly served the aristocracy, was disbanded and lost its clientele, and those who smelled of perfume lost their heads, or were at least at greater risk of life and limb, more than the tobacco-smelling and morally superior revolutionaries of that time, in any case. So question one, does the Enlightenment, which seemed uninterested in sensorial perception, in other words, spirit without either, continue to influence our thinking today? Or have we, meanwhile, disproven the premise of Hegel that olfactory sense does not serve rational thought? Who is driving this research, and in this regard, and how it is being conducted. And I'm very happy that you are here, especially. Question 2, is the term immaterial sculpture a contradiction in itself? For the past 250 years, more or less, odor was a matter of manifestation and translation. And at the turn to the 20th century, the non-intellectual essence of smell began attracting more interest in the arts. Henri Bergson referred to it as a physical knowledge. And around 1915, the futurists believed that sensory stimuli, like smells, images, and sounds, could be translated from one to the other. Attempts were made to find modalities reflecting the shared characteristics of vision and olfaction. These include, and please forgive me only mentioning some keywords, Belle Alain, aromatizing sculptures, The Brave New World, 1932, in which Aldous Huxley came up with the idea of a scent organ, the Smell-O-Vision from Charles Weiss and Hans Laube, in which varying scents were emitted from beneath movie theater seats on cue with the film soundtracks. So clearly, odor is material-based, for it consists of aerosol particles, of molecules, and molecules are matter, and that makes them material. Although visible with optical aids, they can only be perceived with one instrument, the nose. One of them, or the nose perfumer of the 20th century, Edmund Runitzer, and different other one, often refer to body when they describe fragrances. In other words, they possess something which is very material in a way. In the 1980s, the lack of body odor as a social issue, the tabooization of body odors versus the aura of olfactory identity became a subject of widespread discussion. And I would be interested in hearing to what extent art historians and natural scientists regard olfaction as an aesthetic act and odor as an aesthetic object. Or should we rather ask philologists, is this a problem of semantics? Is this merely a matter of terminology? Do we have to simply find a method to translate it into language, or does it perhaps already exist? If we consider the term and linguistic translation of many things related to odor, we find our language rather lacking, perhaps impoverished, isn't it right? Every day we are fully shielded against anything that smells. Sewage, body odors, cooking smells are vacuumed away so as not to assault our noses. But this also prevents our sensory organ from receiving adequate training. So I was trained very much today when I walked through the exhibition. However, in terms of cognition, memory, and emotion, the art would appears to be exploring the sense of smell more intensively. Since the groundbreaking exhibition, The Art of Scent, presented by the olfactory art curator Chandler Bohr at the Museum of Art and Design in New York, 2012, the aesthetic development and design of fragrances have found their place in the scene, in the art scene. In fact, a new department for olfactory art opened at the MID, followed by other international projects. And again, only keywords. 2013, Japanese researchers developed the smelling screen. The O-phone, currently in development, takes smells mobile, enabling users to text any of 320 different scents, creating personalized aromas that are produced by cylinders cinched to a smartphone via Bluetooth. And different museums, Berg, Rieden, Basel, Bremen, show bigger exhibitions until 2021. So you were there, your work were there, and we discovered that so many variants of visual arts have successfully explored this topic that we can now speak of a recognizable olfactory art. So my humble contribution to these subjects reminds me of the so-called Mobile Academy in the Follow Me program 2017 in Frankfurt. It's titled The Sensitive Museum from the Surface to Under the Skin. There we discuss whether multisensory experiences make a stronger impact on us if sensual stimuli are incorporated on different levels. Apparently, this doesn't appear to be the case in the museum and art product marketing, and the interest in pursuing this idea has since ebbed. Not only can olfactory stimuli dull our senses of smell, the management of expectation and surprise can fade away as well. Therefore, let me quickly come to the end. I wish you all a symposium that challenges all your highest intellectual senses on a high level, which or with the adding or added value of sensual experience. I wish to thank the curators. They are both here, Florian Waldvogel and Thomas Thiel, and all participating artists. And I'm very much looking forward to your answers to our questions throughout the evening and tomorrow. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Marie Haff, already for this activating greeting, and also for the review of what has happened until today on the field of senses and its traditions. Herzlich willkommen im Museum für Gegenwartskunst. Ich werde auch die Einführung in Englisch halten, weil wir sozusagen gleich anschließend 2 Vorträge haben, die Englisch sind. Aber es gibt auch einen Beitrag eben noch von Herrn Müller-Grünow dann um 7 Uhr in deutscher Sprache. Wir haben ein bisschen ein Experiment vor, die Sprachen zu mixen, um auch diejenigen, die des Englischen nicht so mächtig sind, ganz direkt auch einige Vorträge erleben zu lassen. I'm switching back to English. Very warm welcome here at the Museum für Gegenwartskunst Siegen. I am delighted to have you all here, that you followed the invitation. And I'd like to welcome our speakers, especially not all are with us already, but it's a great honor for me that you came and as such knowledgeable speakers to have you here in Siegen. You have read it in the program. Today and tomorrow we can expect lectures from Ilona Kroy, professor at the clinical psychology at the Friedrich-Schiller-Universität in Jena, Jim Drobnik, professor for contemporary art and theory in Toronto. There's Hans Hatt tomorrow, professor for cell physiology at the Ruhr-Universität in Bochum. Osvaldo Macia, one of the artists from Santa Fe, New Mexico in London. Robert Müller-Grünow from Cent Communication in Cologne. Clara Ossiti, artist from Glasgow. And Luca Vitone, artist from Milan and Berlin. I would also like to thank you, Florian Waldvogel, who developed the concept of the exhibition together with me and will take part also in the planned discussion tomorrow. The Tiroler Landesmuseen are the cooperation partner in Innsbruck, where the exhibition will then be shown from April 27 under different spatial conditions. So there will be a second edition, which will be also interesting for us to see and to compare and to exchange on. I would like to take the opportunity also to express our great thanks to the Kulturstiftung des Bundes, the Federal Culture Foundation, Federal Government Commissioner for Culture and Media on behalf of Marie Haff, who I'm glad who join us even for tomorrow, and also for Kunststiftung NRW, for their great extraordinary support we received for the exhibition, but also this Symposium. And last but not least, I would also to thank my colleagues Fenja Fröberg, Lea Merz, Monika Perch for the great preparation and organization of the symposium. Allow me to say a few words about the exhibition itself, which is in many ways for our museum special, but I think also in general. Sissel Tollas, one of the participants, put it once in a nutshell: I smell you before I see you. And that's also kind of a concept of this exhibition, that for once here at the Museum of Gegenwartskunst, we devote ourselves usually primarily to seeing, but rather place smell now and the olfactorial, the spatial experience at the center of art. And besides former exhibitions, there's a strong contrast of experiencing the spaces who appear almost empty, but yet they are filled, we already heard it, with molecules. And even more than in other exhibitions, the works share the space, especially the air. They concentrate and they evaporate, are perceptible in different intensities. And we present, as we said, immaterial sculptures, which can be discussed, as you're right. Numerous new productions, works adapted to the spaces, whose effort is not necessarily visible, but nevertheless cannot escape as you might pass a painting, for example, or a video installation. The exhibition eludes visual experiences in favor of an immersive event that can only be experienced in the here and now of visiting the exhibition, which changes its intensity, its appearance over each day and over each situation. Smells awaken feelings, moods, memories in us. They overlay other senses, influence other perceptions more than we realize. Scents create closeness and distance at the same time. They inscribe themselves in our memory, consolidate our experience, and yet their existence, space remains invisible, and the act of smelling is fleeting. The sense of smell is considered one of the oldest of all senses, as we also heard already. Compared to the sense of taste, for example, it's neglected by many. And also we can't smell anyone. It's difficult to describe impressions that arrive in our nose in the same way we are used to speak about visual or sound experiences. In this respect, sense can be reproduced, but it is difficult to document the individual experience and its intensity. And yet the sense of smell is the only sense that has direct access to the center of memory, to the emotion in the brain. And in all cultures, scents and smells have a long tradition of their own, are involved in the construction of personal and cultural identity. Against the backdrop of the pandemic, a different awareness of the senses of smell and taste has emerged once again. The air, the molecules, the viruses in space, which, with the culture of distance, has made smelling as a form of interpersonal interaction more difficult. An artist who just visited the show a couple of days ago told me about an event in the US that they realized or calculated the virus or the corona infection in regions because people complained about scented candles they bought that they wouldn't work out. And so they could see that obviously they lost the smelling over time. So our exhibition here at the museum is entirely dedicated to this power of smells, based on immediate experience, and the artists involved open up personal, local, and global perspective related to historical but also current events. Each institution's contributions dealing with time and space, individual and community, consciousness and unconsciousness, visibility and invisibility, the everyday and the miraculous, the self-perception and the perception by others, presence and absence, life and death. Minimal artistic interventions in architecture make spaces breathe, smell, and transpire. And so it's a dynamic exhibition whose intensities change. And we have consciously decided also against doors or partition walls, for example, in the awareness that we all share the architecture and the air, and that molecules like clouds do not care anyway about boundaries anyway. The symposium we're starting today is meant to deepen this investigation with the sense of smell and the condition of the immaterial in a broader sense. And it was very important for us that the invited speakers not only focus on abstracts of art, but open also up on current scientific perspectives on sense in art and society. And to give a short overview about today's program, we'll start with Jim Drobnik, a critic, curator, and professor of contemporary art and theory at the University in Toronto, who will open up the forum with an overview on the origins and challenges of olfactory art and the artistic interest in scent. And he has published widely on visual arts and senses in recent anthologies, such as Olfactory Art in the Political in the Age of Resistance, Designing with Smell, Food and Museums, Senses in the City, or, as also mentioned already, the Multisensory Museum, just to name a few projects. Artist Clara Ursiti, a participant of the show, will discuss how her use of scent has evolved over time, her obsession with what is invisible, either literally, through the non-visual senses, or metaphorically, through dominant social relations or attitudes. And since the early 1990s, she is working with scent and social space, creating ephemeral installations and public interventions. And Clara also has exhibited widely, is a recipient of many awards. And besides, she lectures in the Sculpture and Environmental Art Department of Glasgow School of Art. Robert Müller-Grünow will focus in his talk on scent as the most underestimated medium of communication. His lecture examines how the perception of the nose can influence evaluations and even behavior. Robert founded Scent Communication in 2003. Congratulations to the 20 years of existence. Just realizing. One of the world's leading providers of scent technologies and scent concepts. Since the company founding, Scent Communication has developed a number of innovative systems for storing, delivering scents and aromas, opening up new areas of application for scents as a design tool or communication medium, as well as creating brand fragrances for well-known brands or new fields of application for scents. So we all have the opportunity for Q&A, question and answers after each contributions, because before we go on. And as you see, we're switching between art, science, and communication. We share scientific, artistic, and curatorial experiences. And in this sense, I also wish us a stimulating symposium with further exchange and new insights on Odor. And now, Jim, the stage is yours.